Well, good morning, everybody. Thomas Joyner with the Business on Purpose podcast here. So excited you're joining us here. I'm joined today by Scott Beebe, our founder, and excited to dive into a little bit of a longer conversation today based around what we like to call the 30-day business owner challenge. It is indeed a challenge. It's hard preparing for it. It's hard in the middle of it. It's hard figuring out on the back end, what did we learn from it? And what do we need to do differently as a team and growth and all that? And so Scott, first of all, welcome, man. Excited you're here. And second of all, why don't you just hop right in and intro what is the 30-day challenge and why is it kind of a big deal in the life of Business on Purpose?
There's been a few different ways that we've heard this play out just in our coaching times with our clients. And where this really sort of generated from was a few years ago. It was a guy named Eric Burton, a dear friend of Business on Purpose and of ours. And he owns a multi-location audio installation shop, auto, marine, that sort of thing in the Nashville, Tennessee area. And he asked me one day, and I've still got the email. I still, when I go out and do talks and things, I show this email. He said, "Hey, what does it look like if I'm successful?" And so we were talking about that. And I said, well, this is a long-term relationship. There's a lot of progress. You go through different stages. So you never really graduate. But I tell you what, we'll call it a success if you can leave your business for 30 days and it grows.
Yeah.
And, it was just sort of a comment in passing or whatever. So anyway, I get an email from Eric. I don't know if it was a year or 2 years later. And it says, "Hey, my wife and our family and I just got back from 30 days. And I want to let you know we actually beat what you told us because we were gone 31 days and not 30 days. And so it just sort of generated this idea. And we've had another client of ours, Tim Nemec, who brought up an idea of sort of a death test. What would happen to the business if something happened to the owner day to day? And it really, we ask this question all the time of potential clients and our existing clients is what happens to the business if something happens to you? And so we put together this simple little 30-day challenge. And then we thought as a business ourselves with a team of 9 people, business has been running almost 9 years. We go, well, wait a second, shouldn't we do it too as sort of a model to prove it to ourselves, to run the test on ourselves? And there's a lot of benefit that surrounds that one idea. So when you hear it, you just think, oh man, what I wouldn't give for 30 days away. That's actually the minority part of the value of doing this. There's a lot of other things, and we'll get into that. But yeah, that's the genesis of it.
No, I love that thought, and I think with that comes a lot of emotions, a lot of anxiety, especially on the business owner side. But even from the team of like, wait. Now there's more on my shoulders and our shoulders and everything that comes with that. So walk us through real quick, like what were the challenges leading up to it? What's the business owner thinking coming into that time? And maybe even like, what was the pre-work, I guess, coming into that? How do you prep for 30 days away from your business?
I would say 90% of my emotion from the owner's perspective was guilt. To be just very, very honest, was guilt. I'm the one getting to do this. The team's not. What are they going to think? All of those sorts of things.
Yeah.
And I had to get over that. And you and Jesse and others helped me with that because you helped me to understand, no, this is an opportunity for us to come in and to step up. And that's something that we want to do is we want to lead. And quite frankly, we want to prove that we can run the business without you. And that goes back. Part of the challenge is the mission we gave ourselves as a business is we wanted to see the business grow by one client while I was away. So for that month, in our case, the month of July, we wanted to see the business grow by one client. Because if it grew by one client, it wasn't just Scott left and the business kept going. It was Scott left and the business grew. And that's the real challenge. When the owner's gone, not can the business stay afloat. There's a fair amount of businesses that could stay afloat. Some businesses will decline, but can still make it. The big question is, will the business grow? Is there flourishing that happens because everything's set up when the owner's gone? And so I would say to mix that emotion of, I had to sort of get over the guilt and realize that this is a value pretty much all the way around. And then number 2, I think when you get to this stage, we're here 8.5 years in, you really do forget how much effort, energy, and intensity has gone in that you just weren't paying attention to. And then you finally get to this moment, you're like, wow, like I'm out of gas.
Yeah.
I just don't have anything in terms. And I even had this, and I haven't even shared this with you, Thomas. I got back to my mastermind group, and the day we started back, we had a mastermind meeting, and we meet every week, but this was a particular Monday. And And the guys asked, hey, will you take the whole time and give us reflection? Most of them are business owners. Give us reflection on your month away. I felt a little uncomfortable doing it, but I had a journal that I've read some to you guys. And so I just started reading through what I read. And we had a member of the mastermind, you know who he is actually, but we had a member of the mastermind who at the very end said, Scott, I want to tell you something. Before you left, you sounded angry. And now that you're back, he said, I don't know what happened the month you're gone other than what you've told us, but you feel a lot lighter coming back. And I was like, dang, man, I wish you'd have told me I was, angry. I'm about to get angry now. No, but it was just, he could see a countenance shift. Now, there's a lot of work that went into that, and we'll get into that as to what that looks like. This isn't something that you just show up and turn it off for 30 days. It requires months of preparation. And quite frankly, I think, and you'll have to be the judge of this, not me, but I also think it requires a lot of intentional reentry coming back in to be very, very careful. But yeah, that's sort of what I was feeling going into that. I'm curious from your perspective. You sit in the role as our director of coaching. You've got a full plate of clients that you serve. You've got a team of coaches that you lead. You're responsible for our recruiting, our hiring, and onboarding of coaches. You're responsible for our check-in of coaches and continuity and all those things. How are you feeling going to this as a key leader of the team?
Yeah. It's funny to touch on something that you said a little bit earlier. I think one of the things that you notice coming into these times, and it's not the business owner's fault. I guess it is their fault, but it's a survival mechanism when for so long everything's been on your shoulders. And then the team grows to a certain point, because until 3, 4, 5 years ago, it was you and some administrative help, And so if we're doing a live event and the speakers are glitching, you're the one running to the back of the room to tweak the knobs. If the internet's out, you're resetting the router. And so there's survival mechanisms that you don't even realize are in place, and you try to hand off, but there's still this quick twitch, like jump back in and save the day. You've got your little Superman cape underneath right there that you make sure is on at all times. But I think there was a lot of our team that were wanting to take some things, but until it was like, all right, I've got my hands all the way off. You're not the dad who's letting his son drive the car like this, and he's got his hand on the steering wheel underneath, if you know what I'm saying there. And I think it was really healthy. It allowed our team to stretch their legs in some ways, to grow in some ways, honestly, to put some of our own flavor on some things that we had, I don't want to say hadn't been allowed to, but when there's all these voices and a clear kind of path and direction on some of that, I think that you're shy about putting your flavor on some things. And so the prep work on our end looked a lot like clarity on job roles of, all right, what am I being asked to do while you're gone? Is it just the same old, same old? Is there anything extra, a few extra things that are put on there? And honestly, what are the mission critical extra things, right? Because you could throw 100 different things. And from my point of view, the goal is not how do we replace Scott Beebe over the 30 days, right? Because that's not going to happen without adding a whole lot of extra capacity. But it's what are the mission critical things? And then what are the repeatable things we can be held accountable for that will then help the business grow? And so a big piece of that's job roles. A big piece of that was diving in and making sure our team meeting structure was in place in a way that we could have the conversations that we needed to have without you. And we had a lot of eyes on the things that we needed to have eyes on. We even hired a new coach, 2 weeks before you left, right? And so you talk about mission critical. That's training a new coach. That's marketing. That's sales. That's all of this stuff that making sure, all right, do we have the system ready to support that coach, help them get some new clients so that they're not just siphoning, cash flow out of the business? And so I will say to anybody who's thinking about doing this, I can't echo enough that this isn't just all right, let's count to 3 and take our hands off the wheel. And what happens, happens. This is year at least, getting ready for this and understanding, all right, here's what we're thinking we're going to do. Where are the holes that we need to put together, and then, all right, 6 months out. All right, we gotta start, putting all the little walls on things and making it look pretty. And then, all right, we're a month out. What do we need to talk about? And so I think there were a lot of steps along the way that led it to being what felt like a success and ultimately accomplished the goal of being +1 from a client perspective. So
Mm-hmm.
a lot of work went into that. I think our team was excited. We were obviously nervous because there's just added pressure there. But I think, pressure sometimes reveals what you have versus just people kind of saying, no, I don't want to feel that, And so I think it was really good for us. We've kind of talked about the pre-work side. Scott, give us your thoughts on what was just it like being gone for 30 days and not answering. I know you answered some personal stuff, but no business related texts, emails, voicemails, Slack, all that stuff. Apps are deleted off your phone. What was that like for you?
Yeah. So to give context, one of our coaches and I were in Houston doing a series of talks. Ashley and I were set to leave out Thursday afternoon. On a Thursday afternoon at the end of June, we were in Houston on a a Wednesday, Thursday, giving talks. And on Thursday afternoon, we were in the Houston airport, ready to fly out, in this case, to Paris was the first stop that we were headed to. And Ashley and I were sitting down. I said, all right, I'm about to do it. And I went into I don't have an email app on my phone. I get email from my browser on my phone. I don't want the app on my phone, but I went to that browser and I completely closed it out. And it's like, all right, that's symbolic. That's done. I do have the Slack app. We use that for internal communication. And I went and I literally deleted the Slack app off my phone, completely gone. So much so, it was so funny. Jessie sent me a little text a couple of days ago. Slack was telling her that I have become inactive because I didn't do anything for so long. And so she took that as a real badge, by the way. And then the last thing I did is I carved off in a little corner space in the Houston airport, which is not an attractive airport. And I just shot a final video to all of you guys and just said, hey, I'm grateful. We're ready. And I think that moment, I just felt excitement because going back to the preparation, if I were to line out some specific things I wanted to make sure that we're done, we reclarified our org chart. Of course, all of our team went away for our annual getaway anyway the week prior. So that helped. The timing was really good. But we reclarified our org chart with those updated job roles that you talked about. We rehearsed and went back over the team meetings, which, by the way, just for clarity, I don't lead any of our meetings. Thomas leads our team meeting. Patrice leads our coaches meeting every Monday. And then Jessie leads our directors meeting. So I'm already not responsible for those, which is a huge help and a big takeaway for owners looking to do it, because too many times owners are proactively inserting themselves in where, yes, others could lead the meetings in their absence, but it is a different energy the day that they're gone. And so we've gotten in the habit where I don't even lead them anymore. So the energy stays the same, whether I'm there or not, theoretically, whether I'm there or not. And then the other thing is, during our check-ins, we had a lot of conversation about prep, expectations. We talked and we found that a gap during our time away was you and Jessie understanding budgets. So I've been working on that. So my 12-week plan is to update a lot of those budgets so that we can have clarity on that. So it revealed some things that we need to have clarity on, but it also revealed some things that we're doing really, really well. And so all this goes back into your question. How did I feel? I have to be honest, going into it, I felt we were so well prepared that a lot of people say when you go into sort of a sabbatical or whatever, it takes you a week or 2 weeks or whatever to get. I felt it pretty quick. The next day we were on a layover in the Paris airport and our flight got delayed 9 hours. I just slept on the floor. Like I was pretty comfortable, quite honestly. And the other thing that I did, this sounds really silly. I don't give myself a lot of time to play. And I downloaded a FIFA soccer game on my iPad and I just allowed myself to play it. And I've got a mentor of mine. He's really challenged me over the years to be, his quote is intentionally wasteful, intentionally wasteful. And during the month of July, I really tried to be intentionally wasteful. And I asked all of you guys, and I told all of you guys that there would be no business conversation. Of course, we texted back and forth with pictures and fun stuff and whatever, just personal stuff because we've got relationships. But as it relates to the business, now we'll tell you this. Ashley told me about a weekend or so, hey, do you want to hear something encouraging? That's another piece of context I do need to share for the full story is I am married to the person who runs all of our finances. And so Ashley is a part of the team. She's well connected in the team. So the team had access to Ashley while we were both away. So that does help. That's a value. And I want to tell the full story about what that looks like. But I will also tell you that she shared nothing with me from a business standpoint. She even asked me one time, do you want me to share some good news with you? And I said, no. And here's why I said that, because my mind, if you're sharing the good news with me today, but don't tell me there's any more good news, then I'm assuming that's all we got. The whole month was that bit of good news. And then if you share the good news and it's just sort of nominal news, it's not really great, then I'm like, oh man. So I really elected to not know anything. And I'll be honest, I knew nothing when we came back. Thomas and I got on a call Monday. He downloaded some things. And then Jesse and I got on a call later that day, got some downloads, and then we had our check-in. So I would say overall, I felt free. I was curious in moments, but I would always take that curiosity. And this is one thing that I did. There's a guy named Father Murray Bodo who has this thing called a pilgrim's prayer. And here's how it goes. I'm not in control. I'm not in a hurry. I walk in faith and hope. I greet everyone with peace, and I bring back only what God gives me. Any moment that I felt any level of anxiety about the business, I would just go back to that credo and recite it in my head. And that would sort of calm me down a little bit, redirect me to where I was at, because we were in some beautiful places, and just go, all right, I've bought this time with the 8.5 years of effort, with a lot of preparation. I bought this time. Don't buy it back with anxiety. And so I would say my anxiety was really limited, and my awareness to see and hear what was in front of me was very heightened, because I had people around me pushing me to do that, and because we had prepared so much going in.
Yeah. No, I love that, man.
Let me flip it. While I'm gone, how did you feel?
Terrible. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Oh, threw up every morning on the way to work. No, we, there's added pressure there. I spoke to that. I think, week one, you're nervous of like, man, don't mess this up. But at the end of the day, I think one of the things that we worked really hard on is what we call our culture calendar. And if you have not seen that before, go back. We got some great tutorials and podcasts on the culture calendar, but we had a system that was repeatable and that we had been running for months and honestly years up until that point. That I don't want to say nothing changed when you left. It was just the faces in the room changed. And so we still had our coaches meeting, to walk through everything at 4:00 on Mondays. We had our team meeting, kind of talking through events coming up and cultural stuff and just being a team on Tuesday mornings. We had a directors meeting on Friday with some of our director level people and walk through that. Our coaches had their weekly schedules that I didn't have to step in and say, hey, are you doing your job? It's like, no, you've got your job and you're doing it. We even went and spoke at a builder conference that we had never had a platform before. So we were developing new platforms, new places to work, got new leads in, trained new employees. And so it very much felt like for a year, we had been like twisting up the monkey, who has the little symbols right there. And then you just let him go. And the system ran really, really well, and we've talked about what are some of the loopholes. We'll probably talk about that in a little bit. And it was not perfect. There's no part of it that we came home. And I think one of the things that we appreciate is it makes the team appreciate everything that, Scott, you do that we don't really ever see or think through. And in all honesty, some of the weight that you carry on a day-to-day basis that we don't have to go to sleep feeling at night. And so there was a deep breath when we heard your plane landed on U.S. soil, and we were like, he's coming back. But I think the team was excited, and, we would have check-ins of, all right, how are we looking on this stuff? How are we looking? Because we wanted to succeed in the absence and prove that, we can get it done. I think the last thing I'll say on that is this time away, like a lot of the credit goes to our team. You know what I mean? It does not go to me and Jesse just like, oh, we perfectly moved the chess pieces while you were gone. And so I think a lot of people will push back and they'll say, well, we may not have the right leadership for this. And it's like, I think that is a key component, but there's so many layers to this success that it is so far from all on my shoulders or Jesse's shoulders or any one person's shoulders. Like our team did such a great job being like, great, we know what to do. Now let's go execute and let's go implement and let's go get it done. And so I think that was one of the things I was super encouraged, 2 weeks in, just being like, yes, we are not having to have all these hard conversations of like, well, Scott's in Italy or wherever, so-and-so's an hour and a half late 3 mornings in a row. And so I think it reveals a lot of the character and really the fabric and culture of your business that you've been working so hard to accomplish. Like you just start seeing it on some of the consistency there. Does that make sense?
Totally. Yeah. I do want to reiterate, the month wasn't without challenge.
Yeah.
So when we say the mission was to grow the business by +1, you didn't just wake up third week and go, hey, we got a client. There we go. We win. There was roller coasters
Yeah.
all throughout the month that you had to shoulder and Jesse had to shoulder and the team had to shoulder as well. I like what you said there, though. It just reveals what's there.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the huge values of a time like this.
Yeah. Walk through from your perspective, Scott. What were the successes and failures from your perspective?
Yeah, well, obviously we had the check-ins this week. And so that was helpful for me to hear from you guys as to what you saw and what you heard. And as many people know in our check-ins, we walk through a series of questions. Give us a big win where we've hit on our mission and values. I'll say one of the biggest wins is probably Jesse telling me sincerely when I came back in, she said, I really thought about calling you and saying, continue to stay away for 2 more weeks. Just like, we got it. We got it. And there was sort of this pride of like, we're doing it. And we got it and we're good. And it would be even cooler if you stayed away another 2 weeks. You know, I almost took her up on it. So that was kind of a cool win to one of those first questions. The second question we asked is, what are you seeing and thinking? And so you were able to download on me with that yesterday, Jesse, a couple of days ago. And it was really helpful to come back into the familiarity of questions that we ask each other all the time already. So having those check-ins beforehand for years led up. So when we had the check-in, when I came back, it wasn't unusual. It was normal for what we heard. Of course, we asked about blind spots, and there were some basic blind spots that came up. Nothing really around personnel. It was more around just logistical things. We've never been strong on building budgets as a business. And now we're going to be really strong on that because we saw that and identified that as a blind spot to come back in. Next question we asked is, what do you need from me coming back in? But the final one, this was sort of a big aha for me. And I'll play it out into a situation that we both lived Tuesday morning at our team meeting. So Thomas is running our team meetings. We're going through, and just so you know, over the last 6 months, I've really had to work to not talk a lot. And Thomas he's gotten on to me sometimes. Hey, we need you to talk a little bit more. And I'm like, wow, but if I start talking, I won't stop. And so it's a back and forth, and it's a learned thing because I don't want to suck the energy or the air or anything out of the room.
Yeah.
And a lot of times I have to be really careful. I just did it this morning. I was talking to Brandon. I told him about some nuance I saw. And then I said, by the way, you talk to Thomas first. Just know that this is here and you can talk to him about that. I could have easily gone, hey, Brandon, I want you to do this, that, and the other. But I have to hold myself back because it's not how we've designed things to go. And so we got to the last, it's not a question, it's a statement. Here's what I see and here's what I need. And what I shared both with you and Jesse was something caught me off guard. So we had our coaches meeting on Monday. Everything went great. Patrice led it well and nothing. And we just kind of went through our agenda. Then we got to Tuesday. And at the end of the meeting, you started going over the 12-week plan live event. It's our next big live events coming up here in a couple of months. And typically I'm the one spearheading, planning it, reminding everybody, making sure everybody's got what they do and all this stuff. Well, I came back and you guys have 95% of it planned. And so you're going over it. And there's a part of me the whole time, it's like, heck yeah. Like I've been telling the team for a long time, I don't want to deal with this, like the setup part of it. I love the speaking part of it. I love the engagement with clients and meeting new clients and all those sorts of things. But like, you know, figuring out tech stuff and how we're going to get the internet and all that, like, I'm just done with that after years of doing it, to your point earlier. And so we're going through it. I'm like, yeah, man, this is great. I'm just sitting there listening. And then Thomas ends the meeting with, and Scott, we'll have you come up at the very end. And I'm like, okay. And you remember I asked, I was like, hey guys, yeah, because you said, hey guys, anything else? Go around the horn. Jesse, you got anything? Yeah. Scott, you got anything? And I went, do you guys need anything else from me for the live event? And it caught me. And this is what I'll share with everybody who's listening. What I shared with Thomas yesterday is, and this has nothing to do with Thomas or Jesse or Brent or Brandon or anybody. It has everything to do with me. I did not realize that when I said, I don't want to do this anymore, what I did not mean is I don't have an opinion on how it's done. And that was a huge aha for me. And I can see where as leaders begin to delegate things, that a lot of times we still hang on to a piece of that thing after we've delegated, rather than truly going, all right, I've not delegated it to the point where I don't care. That's sort of abdication. Yeah. I've delegated it to the point where this person I've delegated it to, it is now their responsibility to get it done, but embedded within the mission and the values. And that's what really got me, is there are things that I don't want to do them anymore, but I need to be honest that I do care how they're done. And so that was an aha you and I talked about yesterday. And I just told you, I got to be honest. Like, I felt this, but I want you to know that it had nothing to do with you. It had nothing to do with Jesse. It had everything to do with my psychology of getting around that. And so that was probably the big, and I think that one situation can play itself out over everything while you're gone. And if there was the big takeaway from a leadership standpoint, that was it. Is there are a lot of things I don't want to do anymore, and frankly don't need to do anymore, because we've got team members that are better at it. And yet I still do have an opinion on how those things are done. And we've got to have a platform to be able to talk about that, which we do through our check-ins. And so I would say that that's one of the biggest takeaways for this whole thing, is when you're preparing to go out, have frequent intentional conversation. When you're preparing to come back in, go slow. I did not turn my email on until noon on the first day I was back. I didn't turn it on the second I landed back into the country. I did not turn my Slack on until the second day that I was back. And when you and I and Jesse and I called some of the other team members, had our talks, it was just, hey man, how you doing? Like, just general. We'll talk specifics later on. But I wanted to be very careful not to be a tidal wave, as is my nature, to come in with ideas and new things and all of those sorts. I still have not shared a new idea with you guys yet. And we're, 4 days of me being back. And so I think that's really important and was a huge takeaway for me.
I want to comment on one thing you said there, because I think that piece of, I don't want to do it, but I still have an opinion, there's inherent conflict there, right? Because I think when you're delegating and trying to let go, that's a hard place for an employee to be. Of, I'm trying to take it and do something great with it. And I think there's two ways it can go. One way is this constant, like this umbrella hovering over, and it's just, man, I never get to kind of make anything fully my own, because the owner, whoever had it prior to that, is constantly like just being negative or kind of cutting your legs out from under you. I don't think that's what we're talking about here. I think what we're talking about here is, how do we build a new system and a new process to be able to say, great, you're running with this. Let's just come back in and check in on it and have some sort of conversation around it for me to be able to lay eyes on it and say what I think about it. Like, that's fair to be able to say, well, I don't know if I would do it quite that way, or have you thought about this? Give some feedback, while also not saying, man, I just spent 20 hours preparing for something and you just came in and basically wiped it clean. And so I think there's this tug back and forth, and we're going to have to think through some of this as a team to allow the voices to speak into those things that have kind of been offloaded, and make sure that you don't end up taking them back. That was one of the things that you mentioned in our check-in is, hey, don't let me, because my MO is going to be, I'm going to come back in and try and grab things that I feel out of control on. And I've got to realize that you guys have it, and I'll weigh in. We'll build the system and the process for how do we check in on that, and how do we weigh in? What's that conversation look like? But we're also not going to just backpedal. And so I think that's a valuable thing for us. I think one other thing that I was really, really grateful for our team with is, I think that people did their jobs, but I think they did it within the system. And I think we simplified for a little bit, right? Like, it wasn't, I think you can say, all right, we got to grow all these different things while you're gone. It's like, no, we actually just need to keep it simple, and let's figure out the area that we want to grow. There was a very clear, we want to grow by one client. It wasn't 14 different goals for us while we were gone, which I feel like would have scattered us and honestly probably paralyzed us in a little bit. It felt like something that was bite-sized, that was achievable, that was measurable and achievable. Kind of got those SMART goals, right? There was a time frame on it, all of that, right? But it didn't feel like, man, he is asking for the world from us, and then we're going to be held responsible for this. And now we're paralyzed trying to get it all done, and our families suffer, and we just want to be out as soon as you get back, right? I don't feel like, I think our team has momentum. I think, Scott, like I said, you came back a whole lot less angry. No, I'm just kidding. But no, just excited as a team. Feel like we all just kind of grew our confidence and grew in our job roles, and really at the end of the day accomplished it. So, yeah,
I would echo that. I feel like there is a thicker confidence coming back in. And I also feel physically, and some of this I've tried to impose on myself, but I also feel like there's a little bit of a, even in our office space, I don't want to, I got asked yesterday, hey, do you want to use that room? And my response is, you tell me where to go. I'm good anywhere. I can go anywhere. I can do whatever I need to do. And I think we've just got to be really, really careful that at the end of the day, we've set a business that has a mission, and we've got people with systems to be able to get there. Now, there's a whole nother discussion that goes down that, but the reality is I've got to be able to come back in and go, it's not that I'm a visitor here, but I'm not the primary player here. And I've got to remember that when I come back in. There are other things that I'm working outside of this in terms of macro level marketing and budgets and financial stuff and things like that. But the core of what we're trying to do here is to liberate business owners from chaos to make time for what matters most. And so if I'm dominating this building with all my owner stuff that I've got to make sure is happening behind the scenes to help support a team, then we're taking our eye off the ball of that singular mission to liberate business owners from chaos to make time for what matters most.
Yeah, that's really good. I'm going to give my final thoughts, Scott. I'll ask for yours in just a minute. But I think if a business owner were to come to me and just say, all right, how do we do this? Right? Or why should we do this? Or whatever they would ask. I think there's a couple things I would say to that, because we've been asked, right? Scott, you did some content on this the other day, released a podcast on this, and it's just like, man, how do we even get there? And so I think the first thing I would say is you have to make the decision that that's where you want to get, right? Like there's this vision piece to it that unless you say, all right, that's somewhere we want to be, that work never starts. And so I push some of them just to say, all right, just make the decision that that's what you want to do. And then find somebody who can help you get there. You know, for us, it was, all right, we have all of these tools. Let's go to our master process roadmap, make sure all our processes are in place. And so we pull those up at our team meetings and dial them all in. You know, we got all our meeting structures in place. Those look good. We have our culture calendar. We have our job roles in place. And so none of that stuff happens overnight. And so I think if you can decide that that's where you want to go, and then shoot, if it's working with us, if it's finding somebody else that can encourage you and finding a business owner who you can say, all right, what were the things? What's your checklist? Write me a checklist and I'll get working on it. Like, I think that is how it starts. And then I think the last thing I would say is like, give yourself some grace there. It's not going to be perfect. You know, it's not like you walked back in the parking lot and the whole thing was, you know, buildings pressure washed and glowing. And like, there's this light from heaven shining down because all your little angels got everything done. No, there's friction. There was balls that were dropped and plates that smashed. But I think the exciting part is that the confidence grew, the team grew. Scott was refreshed coming back in and is excited for the next phase of business on purpose. And everybody took this kind of collective sigh and deep breath before we dive back into the fall, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
What would your thoughts be on that?
I think there's also a sort of a thought that many businesses, especially businesses with less than, call it 15 to 10 employees and under, there's sort of a thought that the owner's doing the stuff and then there's minions, right, that support. And what an experience like this does is it proves whether you're an owner minion organization or if you're truly a collection of professionals.
Yeah.
If it's an owner minion, then the thing's going to either just be flat or decline. If it's a group of professionals, then what you're going to see is you're going to see progress to some degree. And sometimes it's numerical, sometimes it's cultural, sometimes there's a variety of different things, and you've got to identify what that is. But I think it is important to set to your point, one singular mission while you're away. And I'll even say this, if the business didn't grow by one while we were away, is it failure? No. Could it be failure? Yes. But as we came back in and did our check-ins, we realized there were so many intangible elements.
Yeah.
I believe you grew in courage as a leader. Jesse grew in courage dramatically as a leader. You look around at our coaches and the things they were able to do. We have a brand new coach who is starting to work with his first client here of this month. Like, that is huge in our world to be able to do that. So there's so many intangibles. Yeah. And I think this is the other thing. A message was delivered. A message was delivered to our team. A message was delivered to our clients. A message was delivered to our relationships around to go, hey, this is a thing, right? Yeah. This isn't just a gig. We're not just churning money and all this. There's something beyond this. And so I think it's a great challenge. And I think the mic drop question to ask is, what happens to the business if something happens to you? At some point, you have to run a test because you don't want it. If it ever did happen, you don't want it to be the first time that it was simulated.
Yep. No, that's great. I think that's exactly right. Like, let's test this thing out before a horrible accident or something, and it's tested for you, right?
Yeah.
So that's awesome.
Because honestly, if something happens to me tomorrow, there is skyrocketed confidence in who does what tomorrow versus even just a month ago, even though we had a lot of systems in place. But now it's sort of like, all right, the guy was gone. Like, we did not have access to him.
Yep.
And if he is gone tomorrow, will things be different? Will they be done? Yeah, of course they will. But there is a confidence and a courage as to what happens. And statistically, I won't be gone tomorrow, but that confidence and courage still exist.
Yep. I love that. Well, Scott, thank you for the time today, man.
Thank you.
It's exciting just talking through it,
Yeah.
So if you're listening for the first time today, or you've listened in 1,000 times, I would encourage you, answer that question. What would happen to the business if something happened to me? If we can be a part of the solution for their Business on Purpose here, we work with small business owners and key leaders, businesses 2 to 50 employees, helping them build purpose, process, their people, and their profit. Those are the 4 things that we dive in on, those buckets right there. We love doing it. It's what gets us out of bed every morning to liberate business owners from chaos. And so if that is you, and you would love to be a year from now, 2 years from now, whatever, taking 30 days away from the business, deleting apps on your phone, I just want you to see that it's possible. I think that's the purpose of this. It is possible. There's a life there for your family that you can chase after, and it's worth it. So both on the team side and on the owner side. So Scott, thanks again for joining today. Thank you guys for being here on the podcast, and we look forward to releasing some more stuff soon. Thanks so much.